So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to front load some information that I can share. I looked at our survey that was put out earlier in the day, and there's quite a few questions in there already. I think some of them have been answered in the messaging already, and some I might be able to answer now, and others we will have to work on and get back to. I think the schedule, for me as a parent, schedule is front of mind. Like, what is my life going to be like for my two girls and right there in pre-K 3 and kindergarten? And that's a really big deal. And for pre-K 3 kids who have never been to school before, formal school before, like my little Ella, like they are going to, they're going to learn and they're going to adjust. And if I know anything about my kids, they're just like your kids, and then they're incredibly resilient, more so than us as parents, I'd say. So here's what we can say about the schedule. The schedule it's not going to be a full day of live instruction. That's not good for kids. That has screen time issues. That's certainly not good for teachers. So parents will need to take the schedule the school provides and build a home schedule around that. One of the questions that was submitted is, what can parents do? And making a home schedule that can be best built around our live instruction schedule, and keeping it consistent for your family is what's best for kids. One of the things we talked about this week was being a trauma responsive school, and having minimizing surprises, being consistent, so that kids know what's coming, is a support for kids who've experienced trauma, but it's also a comfort for everyone in a learning setting and in a life setting. People are comforted by routines, and that's especially true for kids. So the schedule will reflect live instruction. It will reflect asynchronous instruction. So that means not at the same time. I'm glad that we are, as a district, emphasizing asynchronous instruction, because there are plenty of families who can't do what I just said, right? I just said, like, the best suggestion for kids at school is to take our school schedule and build your home schedule around it. Well, that's not the only schedule that matters in your house, I'm sure. All the parent schedules, the other kids' schedules, work schedules, whether you're working from home or not working or going in, those create incredible complications. So all of our teachers and me and I will be completely empathetic to making life work, right? And the scheduling is a big part of that. And that's why I go back to that asynchronous learning. There'll be time where our kids won't be in front of our teachers, and they can either be working independently, and we'll make sure as educators, make sure that instruction and learning is accessible to people who aren't available for the 9:30 live Zoom. It's not going to be Zoom, excuse me, it'll be Teams. So we'll have to work on the educational end of how can kids continue to learn if they're live in front of us or if they're not, right? Hopefully, I think we're close to settling the digital divide. We've made a lot of progress in DCPS. That I'm not going to say that that'll be gone, but even with the digital divide, there's still like family issues that will impact access to learning, and that's why learning has to be asynchronous also. Like, let's say it's 6 o'clock at night. That's when the family has time to dedicate to supporting the child learn. So that's why learning will be asynchronous, and that's a really important thing. Let me also talk about how learning is going to be accessed. We already have built out, and I want to thank the communications team, Marisol and help me out, Lona. I'm forgetting.
Zach. Marisol.
Zach Lowe. Have already built out the learning from home part of our school website. What will be added to that once we all get the training is how families can access the learning. Every kid is going to be, every teacher is going to be using a new online learning system called Canvas, and that should be one-stop shopping for your kindergartner, your fourth grader alike. Each teacher will have their own page, and all of the learning links, whether it's a link to live Teams meeting or an asynchronous video and question and answer prompt or the Eureka content, that'll all be available through Canvas. So only one login and you're there, and it'll be well organized and presentable for families. One of the things we plan on having in the latter part of pre-service week, once our teachers are fully ready, is grade level town hall meetings. So teachers can walk through how to access these features, and people can, if the district is ready, the kids can practice getting on, so that there's no, we're going to try and minimize the barriers to making this work for everybody starting on August 31st. Okay, I think that's a big part of it. There's another part of the schedule that I need to mention. Again, I want to say it in front of you, because we're not going to hide from it, but district-wide, this was in my principal message, district-wide, almost all live teaching will happen Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday is going to be a professional learning day, a planning day for teachers. We will still set up asynchronous learning experiences for folks, for kids, but most of the learning on Wednesdays will not be live. Another feature about our schedule as it stands right now is that specials, the inner core, will happen. Okay, we're gonna make sure that every kid has access to live and asynchronous art, PE, Spanish at Watkins, and the other specials that we traditionally offer. Okay, so that, I heard that wasn't necessarily part of the deal in the spring, but that's our plan as of now for our schedule going forward. And that's good news. Like, I really don't want to put a stop to that, even though we're learning from home. I think those are the key features of our schedule that I can share. And I don't think anything I said tonight isn't in our principal's message. Maybe I elaborate a little bit. There were a couple questions I saw that I wanted to ask, that I wanted to raise now, because I think this is an appropriate format. So a couple folks asked, what can we do for our families at home that will make learning easier for the kids? So I think what I said about the schedule is really important. And whether you can match your home schedule to our school schedule isn't as important as, just like everyday parenting, being as consistent and as routine as possible with your life, right? A consistent bedtime, we all know a consistent bedtime makes a difference, going to bed and waking up the next day. Making sure that the kids are, ideally, they can have breakfast, they can brush their teeth, and get ready to go to school, because eventually we will go back to school. So the routines. I would also say, to the best that your family can, make a household schedule and put it up on the wall somewhere, so that you can refer to it, you can go over it with your kids each day, and that can help them minimize uncertainty. Again, that's really hard to do. Way easier said, but that's a fairly standard tip that I think many schools are giving out now. To the extent that you can, create a workspace for your kids, even if it's not always their own space. If there's a schedule for the space, or the table or the desk, whatever it is, it's best that can be quiet and clearly identified as the child's space for learning. That would be ideal. Headphones might work for some families. I know when I was on my Zoom calls with kindergarten last spring, I was surprised how many headphones I saw. But that could be a way to kind of hook kids into the technology and this new experience. We will be revising our supply list, and that will go out to families again. We'll have that up on the 14th, and certainly in the summer mailer. this is a huge ask. I mean, a supply list is a huge ask every year. So what you can get at home is great. Nothing will be, not having something can't be a barrier for access to our curriculum, and we'll work with kids and families around that all the time. There are probably some other tips for home that we can source and publish, and I'm sure parents are sharing, and we'll get those up on our website soon. I had an interesting question about supporting other families in these times, and there was some chatter on the listserv earlier about learning pods and other names for it, that parents are kind of grouping up and figuring out ways to just make it work for their family. So let me start with supporting others. I expect us to start some supply drives, either through the school or other means, and donating to those will certainly be a way to support some families. I think, though, the most important thing to think about as you're trying to support other families is the relationship you already have with those families that you think might need support. So we have an incredibly diverse school at Watkins and Peabody, and that's one of our assets. And there are absolutely families, all families are all over the map with life today. I'm sure some families have lost jobs. I'm sure some families are newly or not so newly experiencing homelessness and are waiting for DCPS and Watkins or Peabody to deliver that device to them. And the stressors on those families and others are incredible. So I think the thing, like I said from the beginning, is we need to rely on each other, and the extent to which you've formed relationships with your children's friends, or your children have their friends, I would say the kind, generous thing to do would be to pick up the phone or write an email to someone that maybe your fourth grader was close with last year in third grade, but you might not know yet, and ask them what they're thinking about to starting the school year, and expand your networks as parents to families that you might not have, haven't yet been in contact with. We're going to do a lot with our schedule and school-wide and class-wide to make sure that we're keeping our community and keeping kids connected to school. Our schedule reflects that. We're going to have a morning meeting every day except Wednesday, and we're going to have school-wide events to continue to build our community and culture. And I would say that as much as you can, reach out to families that you might have a beginning little bit of a relationship with, and just get a conversation going to do a check-in. And that is a way to show that you care about their kids, because their kids are friends with your kids, and we're trying to get through this together. When it comes to the learning pods, it's a really interesting place for us to be in as a school, and I would say as like a government service, right? We pay our taxes so that our kids can get an education. It's not free. We pay taxes for it, but every kid has a right to an education. And now with this pandemic, school's not safe enough to attend, so we have effectively removed that public service, right? And that public service does so many things. School is a place, sometimes the only place for warmth for kids, sometimes the only place for food, sometimes sadly the only place where adults care and love them. And for everybody, it's a place for kids to go from 8:30 to 3:30 and sometimes longer. And that's gone. All that is effectively gone. And the solution is not going to replace what we had, right? And it's not going to replace the connection that we get from being in person. It's not going to replace the learning opportunities, but it's the best thing that really smart people all over the country and world are working on. And for families, their families face a whole different set of challenges because their kids are at home and not at school. And I understand that families are setting up different groups, different networks, where maybe some parents are watching kids some days and they're kind of forming their little COVID bubble so that they're self-contained and safe, but also kind of sharing the supervision and perhaps instructional supports for groups of kids that aren't in their families, but now are in their COVID families. And I understand why that's happening. And I love the fact that people are looking out for each other. Now, how that impacts what we do at school is it's a dubious road for us to start down as school leaders. The fact that education in public school is available and should be by law accessible to everyone is something that is important to me. And how the learning pods influence school isn't something that I necessarily want to entertain, to be honest with you. I'm glad that families are looking for solutions, and my family's looking for solutions too. But how those pods or teams influence our scheduling or class groupings is not something that not a road that we're going to travel down. However, on the other side of that, one thing that when I get the chance to message to our staff in person is that we need to be incredibly consistent across the second grade team, the third grade team, right? So we still want to provide some agency and autonomy and creativity for our teachers to be themselves. But what's happening in the one ELA class in third grade and the other ELA class in third grade cannot be wildly different, right? So folks who might be talking to other third grade families, and I'm not picking on third grade on purpose, it's just an example, they should be aware of what's happening and having not the same, but similar experiences. And I think that's one thing that will be a less of a lift for parents, and frankly, less of a list for teachers. Our schedule provides a decent amount of planning time for our teams, and we're going to make sure that they're working as closely as possible while still preserving that agency and autonomy to make learning personalized and fun for the teachers and the kids. Those are all the points I wanted to kind of front load in terms of how we're thinking about things. I think this session is being recorded and available. The questions that are in the form, we're going to take back. We ask you to ask questions one at a time so we can group them by the category and provide some written response and post those up on our website as soon as we can. Now, I did call this a listening session, right? So we're 27 minutes in and I've done all the talking. I was supposed to listen. So I would like to open the chat to questions or big picture school-wide, campus-wide concerns so that there is opportunity for what parents are thinking and feeling, maybe kids if they're on the call too, could raise up so that me as the principal, our APs and our DSL and any of the teachers that are with us can hear these concerns. So I'll stop with the front loading, and if you have your questions, go for it on the chat. Mr. Bover is going to be our moderator, and we can begin.
All right, we have first question is, will there be a mix of DCPS distance learning packets, which is what parents and students had in the spring, and cluster teacher lesson plans? I can go ahead and answer that.
Yeah.
There will not be DCPS distance learning packets that will be produced in the paper hard copy form that they were in the springtime. So all materials will be accessible virtually. We have another question. Technology is obviously going to be featured heavily this year. What curriculum will Capitol Hill Cluster Schools be using to teach students appropriate online behavior, online safety, social media style appropriate behavior, anti-bullying, etc.? Last year, kids were posting YouTube links in the chat section, live on team meetings. It was distracting, unsafe for young children. This is a critical point that has so far been completely unaddressed. Note, if teachers will be screen sharing in Teams live meetings, you can't whitelist a device, and therefore a parent's ability to restrict websites.
I think I don't have the answer to that. That's something we can get back to you on, and that's good. I think the students will all access their platforms through Clever, which should restrict some of the things that they can do. But just like being responsible, we teach responsibility at school. When you're in the hallways in the cafeteria, we're going to have to transfer that to the digital space. So I think that's a really important question.
Let me add on to the first question. There is consideration for packets for ECE students.
Yes.
For where digital citizenship is concerned, there are online courses where, depending on the age group, they are available for students and teachers to be able to engage in that type of learning for responsibility of practice and use.
Another question. Will there be issuance of books and/or packets for the first term, specifically Eureka math books?
I'm not sure. I know Eureka is fully available online. I don't know if our workbooks are going to get home to kids.
Yeah, I don't know.
So we'll take this, we'll make sure these chat questions are saved and just added to that doc that's coming up.
Next question. We are worried about our teachers who are also parents. Is DCPS offering anything to support teachers who also have kids at home?
That, you know what, we had probably an hour-long, maybe more, call with the chancellor this morning with principals. This was a big question for that's on his plate. So the answer is maybe. That's also something I'm working on, but is certainly complicated. So more to come on that.
How will standardized testing be done for third grade if we stay virtual? And I'm assuming that would be third through fifth grade take our park assessment in the spring, as well as other summative assessments throughout the year.
Yeah, that's another important question. The park is still a question mark. All those big OSCE sanctioned tests are question marks. We learned that this week. Let's see, the other assessments are going to go forward. DIBELS, TRC, RI, iReady. Is that all of them? I learned them all yet? Are all going to continue. And everyone hates, no, I don't know. I hope not everyone hates testing. The best interview question, here's the secret, is about testing. The question is, do we test too much? The answer is, it depends. If you use the data to help kids learn more and fill in the gaps, then you're testing just the right amount. But in this space, like, teachers, parents and teachers have very little information about where our kids are. So if I'm a parent, I'm very curious to see what kind of growth or what kind of slide my child's at. So we'll be putting those testing schedules out there so that you know when you can expect an update on your child's learning progress. I think that's something that often gets missed in this conversation, but like, where are our kids is a wildly important question.
How will kids get to know their teachers as we won't have an existing relationship with them prior to the start of the school year?
Yeah, that's a really good point. We have, I mentioned already, we're going to put our morning meeting into every day for every student, except Wednesdays, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's the responsive classroom structure that we have in our in-person schools that we're going to follow virtually. For early childhood, usually we'll do those home visits. Early childhood schedule will start at a little bit of a different time so that the one-on-one teacher family connection can still happen virtually.
Another question about the distance learning packets, but will it be required of parents to print anything
No.
of the curriculum? And I don't believe that that's not an expectation. I think assignments will be completed online virtually. And I don't know about the Eureka Math books yet, if that's something that schools will be receiving.
Do parents have to participate? No, they don't have to. I can tell you from my experiences, my pre-K4 daughter did this last spring. I needed to hold her hand, and then I was pushed out of the room. So it's probably going to be all over the place depending on where your kids are. And that's not just for pre-K.
Will students have the opportunity to meet their teacher virtually prior to the start of the school year?
Yeah, I got that one, and then I got the one from Kate, and I think we're up to Kathy.
Mm-hmm. Can
Yes.
we post more specific information about schedules in classes ASAP to help parents plan?
We're going to do that as soon as we can. I set the deadline for the 14th. We got our scheduling guidance less than a week ago. So we're feverishly working on that schedule because we know it's a priority for families.
If a student can't log in live on a consistent basis or at all, will logging on to recorded sessions or completing packets allow the student to remain enrolled and engaged in school?
Yeah, okay, great question. And I don't know if I even forwarded this to you, Joy and Mark, but I actually got the attendance guidance. I think that's going to be public pretty soon. But there's two important like dimensions of attendance. One is truancy and like remaining enrolled, like this question raises, and the other is engagement, right? And the guidance says, or it's not guidance, I think it's the policy. It's going to be like you're going to have to log into Canvas every day, that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And once you log in, you're counted like as if you were in school, which I think is great news because families can also say, hey, I didn't get a chance on Tuesday because of blah, blah, blah. And we have to find a point of contact at our schools to go into Aspen, the attendance system, and fix it. So to me, that sounds very flexible. I think in an earlier call in the summer, we're like, we don't want anyone to lose their seat because they can't log in or can't do digital learning, or it's just not working for your family or for your learner. So I think that is a parent-friendly and kid-friendly part of the plan. Engagement is something different. I haven't seen anything about grades, but how kids, whether or not live sessions are for you, the asynchronous learning will also be available. So we're gonna do our best, like the previous question, to get to know our kids, build a relationship so that kids feel comfortable and feel motivated through that relationship to do work and learn.
There's a question, when can parents pick up their technology devices? I'm going to toss this one to Miss Montgomery because I know she's been working with the front office staff in communicating with families who need devices.
Sure. So right now we're in the process of assessing all of our technology needs. Once we have all of that information, the front office team, the operations team will be rolling out a plan for you all for the people who have identified a need to pick up their devices. So information is forthcoming on that. Right now, we're just prioritizing identifying what the needs are.
Oh, go ahead.
I got a private question. I hope it's okay to raise this. I don't see anybody's name, but it's a healthcare professional. So thank you, first of all, to the person who wrote in. It's about what can I do about putting my child online during work hours, and this person says that won't be able to happen. So right now there's not a systemic answer to that, and that's what I was going back to with like the public service of education is not what it used to be, which again is why asynchronous learning is an essential component of learning in this virtual space. So that's the best answer I can give at this time for that.
See. Will supplies be provided for ECE students beyond packets? Some schools are providing curriculum in a box for students in ECE since they aren't going to get much out of the online learning.
I haven't heard about that curriculum in the box. That's a question we can get back to you on.
Will there be small group breakouts for all grades? The answer to that is yes. There will be small group, both small group math and ELA instruction in all grades. So all students will have an opportunity to engage in small groups throughout the week. Will live sessions be recorded? And can you provide some examples of what asynchronous learning content looks like?
Can Teams record sessions? If we post that on Canvas securely, we should be able to, right?
They can be recorded, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some student privacy issues that my last district was very concerned about with posting live video, and we'll have to work with our teachers to make sure that that happens. The teachers, it's not the teacher's security, it's a child's security. Asynchronous learning can look a lot of different ways. It can be read this text and respond to the questions in a online forum or in your journal. It can also be, here's a link to a video, watch it and ask some questions. Some of our, I don't know if Zern has, Zern is going to support us with math. It's an online math application. I'm not sure if they're going to have feedback when students submit answers, but asynchronous learning can look a whole lot of different ways. Teachers will probably make their own live videos, house them they should house them on Canvas so that kids can refer to them at any time in that asynchronous space. So those are some examples of asynchronous learning.
A question about, will schedules be developed and provided so we know what assignments are needed and due, when classes and specials will take place? That way we can build our home schedule around the school schedule.
Yes.
There was a question about attendance, but I think you may have already answered that about attendance. When you say devices, do you mean iPads or laptops? What exactly? I believe it is the Microsoft Pro tablets. Is that correct, Ms. Montgomery? Same as last year?
Correct. The Eli devices that are purchased by DCPS Central Office.
Similar to an iPad, but it does have a keyboard.
Like a touchscreen tablet.
Will additional reading and math tutoring be available if needed?
Yeah, good question. So the schedule is so interesting, and it actually affords us a lot of opportunities. We will have small group instruction that includes interventions, right? So if someone wants some extra support or the data shows that the student is a little bit behind, we're going to create our schedule to adapt to the student's needs, just like we would in the math or the ELA classroom, right? Guided reading groups go through the cycle. The students who are furthest behind see the teacher most frequently. I think we're learning as a district more about the multi-tiered system of supports where DCPS purchased an incredible tool to keep track of our kids and create intervention plans. And I want to dive into that as soon as possible, because those, for the students who are behind, it's our mandate. We have to close the gap. That's the only way to do it. And the only way to do it is by adding more time for those interventions that doesn't come at a cost to the tier one, like the grade level learning experiences. So that's a long answer. Short answer is yes.
Will any manipulatives, activities, etc., come home to support learning? This is something our team was talking about, or I was talking about this with our math instructional coach, but I don't think any decisions have been made about any materials or manipulatives being sent home by the school yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of virtual manipulatives out there, but that they don't all take the place of the concrete ones.
Will pre-K start on August 31st, or will they have a phase start as in prior years?
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned this before, like before a group gets together for pre-K, they'll have a one-on-one with the teacher before that goes. Ms. House, did we get guidance? I can't recall if we got like a whole class start date on pre-K.
Everyone is supposed to start August 31st, but in the same way that home visits were scheduled the first 2 to 3 days, the guidance was to schedule visits in the same manner for the first 2 to 3 days of that session. So again, everyone will start August 31st, though it may not be in class, it may be check-ins.
Another question, would you consider having in-person PE activities in small groups?
Did that say PE activities?
Like physical education?
Yes, we could consider it. see the availability of our teachers.
Another question about just in regards to childcare planning, to have class lists if they are ready, when those are going to be getting out to parents so they can start to plan.
Yeah, I need to learn more about Canvas. I think the most effective way. So I have concerns about sending a list of every child's name in the mail to every family. To be honest, my kid's school does it. I cannot believe they do it. I was a kid who's one of my parents could know where I was at sometimes. So that's a safety thing for me in my background that I'm sure is true for at least one child at Peabody and Watkins. I wonder though if there's a workaround using Canvas where one students log in, and I don't know when the logins will be active, if they can see everybody else in their class. That might be the most effective way to get the list other than before the first day of school when people show up for class.
DCPS had put out sample schedules for K2 with some kids having morning learning blocks and then others having afternoon blocks. Will Peabody and Watkins be using both morning and afternoon schedules? And then when will schedules be coming out? And August 14th is our date to get those schedules out.
Yeah. The kids will be learning all day, hopefully, synchronously and asynchronously. We put in time for recess. We put in time for naps for our little ones. But there will be morning. Did we have morning and afternoon? Did we go all the way to afternoon for some grade levels? I think so. For some live sessions. We like ECE ending their day with a read aloud, a live read aloud. That's where we are with that. So yes, but again, we want to make all the learning accessible asynchronously as well. So families don't have to be tethered to the school schedule.
For families who are purchasing their own devices, any specific device, either a tablet or laptop that we would recommend? I think either. I think a laptop is great, and for many families that had used a tablet last year for distance learning, I had heard a lot of positive feedback about using a tablet as well, especially because it has a keyboard, it has a touch screen, so I think they work. I think both are effective.
Yeah, and I would add that all of the learning is going to be done online, as you all know. So as long as you're able to access the internet and get on the Canvas, you should be fine. So it's really just boils down to preference.
Although another parent says that they felt that the features of the tablet were not as effective or good.
I'm not sure about that.
Class schedules being sent via email or snail mail?
Both. Once they're final, as soon as they're final, we'll post them on our website, and we will put that in the Blackboard to a link to it. It'll also be in a paper copy in the mail. We're putting everything in the mail on the 14th.
When or will we expect a call from our child's teacher in order to be ready for the first day?
Let me tell you, I got an email earlier in the week, maybe last week, saying a teacher said, our team wants to know our kids for sure because we want to send them postcards and start making phone calls, which I thought was just amazing. So I would say at the very latest during pre-service week, everyone will have some contact with your teachers.
Some of the DCPS sample schedules that were shared show that the school day is from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., which is an increase than what students experience in the building. So is that accurate, or is that something that our schedule will reflect?
We're not going to have kids in live learning settings for that long, no.
Will there be any effort, DCPS organized efforts, to bring students together face-to-face in small groups and safely?
Yeah, and they're talking about it, and that's something that was brought up with the chancellor today, and he's been thinking about it as well. It's not exactly clear what that is going to be, but they are working on it, and he's being very careful that it's done in a safe way, it's done in an equitable way. So hopefully we have an answer on that soon.
Is it possible that teachers could start a Google group or a listserv for their new class introductions if logins aren't active soon for Teams?
I think it's possible. Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Someone asked me a question privately. We're going to have to teach our kids how to use devices for those who haven't used them. I do think you will be shocked at how quickly they learn them. My 4-year-old knew how to put a virtual background up before I did. We have to be patient with them and definitely do some direct instruction, and definitely more so on digital responsibility and citizenship. But I'm not worried about the kids picking up how to use the device.
Will specials learning be more robust in the fall, at a minimum weekly live engagement? And I know you've already spoken to that students will experience a special every single day, all specials throughout the week, both synchronous and asynchronous. Question about headphones that may have been left in the student's classroom last year, if those were saved by the teacher and if they're able to be picked up.
I don't know. Do you have an answer for that one, Mark?
I would say, as teachers were packing the classrooms, they did keep a lot of the headphones, especially the ones that weren't labeled, or so they did keep some of those. But I'm sure the school also has headphones to give out to families in need. Will pre-K 3 students be expected to mute or unmute, or does someone need to be sitting with them to help them do that?
Can you control people's mute on Teams between a kid and a student? I don't know. On Zoom, you can mute everybody. I have less experience with Teams. So hopefully, yes. Do you know, Mark or Joy?
On Teams, you can do the same. The host can mute all, or mute individual students.
Is it important for each kid to have access to their own device?
Yeah, it would be helpful. And we've tried to encourage families, let's say you have 2 kids and 1 device for the 2 kids, fill out the technology survey saying that you need a device.
Just a question about when our school day will start. Is it going to start at 8, 8:30, 9 o'clock? Are we ready for that or is that going to come out with the schedule?
I don't, on all of our different schedules, because they're going to be different for the grade level bands, I don't think we have, you know what, I don't have it in front of me and it hasn't gone through any sets of feedback yet, so I don't want to say. I can say it won't start before 8 o'clock. But I don't want to get it in front of our teachers who are going to look at this. I'm hopeful we can answer that question soon, though.
Let's see. Similar to what happened at Peabody, is it possible to get medicines that are still at Watkins in the nurse's office? Medications should be available for parents to pick up. I know a lot of medications were picked up in the springtime, but if anything still remains at the school, we can help get those out to parents. Can paraprofessionals get a device to support virtually? They don't have one.
The only way they could support virtually. They don't have devices?
I don't know. Maybe not all educational aides or paraprofessionals have a device to support.
And DCPS did not distribute technology to educational aides. Independently, schools would have to do so.
All right, Tanisha, can you put that on the list, please, for you?
Yep.
Yeah. We want our paraprofessionals to lead small groups, in addition to helping the teacher in live instruction. So I want them to have devices.
Question about children's items that were packed up at the end of the year in their desks, and library books that they need to return. So what I will say about the items, at the end of the school year, teachers had packed up some of the items that students had left behind. Different classrooms, it varied depending on what students had left behind. A lot of the headphones, teachers had kept those. And then any other items were brought down to the cafeteria. The Watkins gym and cafeteria is currently, and at the beginning of the summer was being used as a cooling site. And many of the items that teachers had brought down, workbooks or anything that was left behind, unfortunately was discarded. And I understand that not all parents had an opportunity to pick up some of the items that were left behind. But the items were discarded as our custodial team in an effort to clear out the gym and cafeteria for a cooling site. So I wanted to address that. And if there are library books to return, we can kind of, I guess, figure out a system or a way for families to return those books. Any library books that were left in classrooms, those were already returned to Ms. Drakowski at the end of the year.
I also think it would be helpful for whoever asked that question to reach out to maybe the front office directly so we can schedule something with you directly.
Just to be clear, we are starting virtually until November 6th, but is it possible that the hybrid option is restored? Or should we gear for virtual for the entire semester?
I would love to know the answer to that question. The best you can be ready for both is is the best I could say. Who knows? I'm going to zoom out for a minute, right? Like we're all in this situation for a lot of different reasons, and this might be this is definitely my personal opinion, but like there are some people doing some things like normal or close to normal, but school's not happening like normal or even close to normal. So I don't know. I don't think I need to tell this to parents, but like the best you can do to advocate to our local or not so local leaders and family about like being safe, wearing a mask, and like prioritizing kids, because that doesn't seem to be happening at the national level, I think is the best way out of this, right? And that's what's going to determine whether we go to a hybrid or stay virtual for a semester or a school year, and hopefully just that. But I can't answer that, and I don't think the chancellor or mayor would answer that yet. What I can say is that we started some planning for a hybrid opening, and we're just going to pick that up once we get over the hump of opening schools. And just like I hope it seems like we're doing, we'll start communicating as much as we can and quickly as we can about those plans once they begin to unfold.
Question about the compatibility of different devices. Is a Kindle Fire tablet, is that going to be compatible with Microsoft Teams and Canvas? I can't answer. I don't know. I think you'd have to find out from whoever makes the device to see if those platforms would be compatible. I'm not entirely sure, or we can find out what devices are. I know we did have students using obviously the Microsoft Pro tablet that was provided by the district. And I know an iPad is also compatible, but I don't know specifically about an Amazon Kindle.
Google says no. Kindle Fire, no Teams. Sorry. I Googled it. What else is that?
DCPS planning for long-term.
Yeah. Yes, we long-term.
Understanding that we're trying to manage for a crisis, needing to recognize that this year will likely set a huge group of kids behind for the learning curve. What is the planning, the testing, budgeting, extra support? What will that look like for school year, future school years?
I don't have the details on that, but I'm going to go again into MTSS, the multi-tiered system of supports. So they made, I'm imagining DCPS made a huge investment in the student data management platform that Mark, Joy, and I learned how to use this week minimally. We got a 30-minute webinar, but we're going to practice, and it syncs up with all these data sources, social emotional surveys, academic grades, and other testing sources. So it would be very hard it would be malpractice for us not to be able to identify the kids who are far behind or even just a little bit behind, because that tool is so powerful. The next thing is, what do we do now that we have that tool? And I would expect our parents, all the city residents, from the chancellor to the mayor, to fund the recovery that we need to recover. So I don't know. I would say, I don't know what the plans are, but like, that's an opportunity to practice democracy. Let your voice be heard with our local leaders.
Looks like we have one last question. Do you know if DCPS is doing any out-of-the-box thinking for in-person learning? For example, any outdoor instruction or utilizing any public spaces like rec centers or libraries?
Man, I'll tell you what, my wife is like, what about the convention center? She keeps asking me about that. They could fit a lot of people in there potentially really safely. I don't know. I think I'll go back to the conversation with the chancellor this morning, was like, so I guess the answer is yes. They are considering how they can do some in-person things for our more marginalized populations, starting with those students. Not necessarily indoor or outdoor. I think yeah, yes, all options are on the table. I think making it that learning and messaging that accessible to folks is messaging how it's going to be accessible to which folks is a tricky thing to do, but I believe they're working on it. Sonia. So Sonia's question about social emotional learning. I would, so yeah, I do have some recommendations, and this is from my experience as a parent. Reach out and do virtual play dates if you haven't started doing that. I think social distance events I do them. They're safe for my family, so that our kids do get some social interaction. And I think all of us should, maybe not right now, but in a small digital setting, show our faces. That's one of the norms that Superintendent Stover, I think, named today for our cluster work when we're together. And I'd suggest that as well for our kids. So to Sonia's question, we'll have more in our curriculum through our morning meeting and other ways that will support the social growth of our kids. Liz, excuse me. Someone asked a question about access the library, art rooms in the schools. Not yet. Kids aren't allowed in school. Is this the last question from the Big Pen?
About small groups and differentiated learning, assessing students at the beginning of the year. When will small group instruction start?
As soon as possible. I would be. I mean, I wasn't around in the spring, obviously, but I'd be surprised if there were no handoff. Like, there were lengthy conversations at both schools about, organizing our kids into balanced and diverse classrooms. So I don't believe that there was that. Yeah. Oh, that's not what the question's saying. So there was some kind of a handoff, and the draft of our schedule is such that our teachers will have plenty of time to collaborate, and we can do that vertically as well. I know that vertical collaboration is really important to the folks at Peabody. I've heard that a lot. How soon will small group instruction start? Depends on the version of the schedule that folks, that our teachers and parents weigh in on, but it could be right away. How often can we expect small group teaching via differentiated learning? So small group instruction is different than differentiated learning. Small group could be we just kind of heterogeneously group the kids, and that wouldn't necessarily be differentiated. But the small differentiated flexible groupings, we do need to do some assessing to make sure that those are done in a smart way. But that doesn't mean we can't start with a small group from the beginning. Individual check-ins, ECE will definitely do that. I remember from our schedule, I don't remember if we put in personal for all kids, but we do have plan on kind of calling up our specials teachers and our mental wellness team to do those check-ins on a regular basis. All right, I'm going to use the last 4 comments as a signal to begin to wrap up. I've gotten some thank yous, and I appreciate that. It's so much. I realize that we're asking everyone, all the DCPS is asking parents just to be patient with us. as we try to do something that's never been done before. And so far, I think everyone has been patient, and I appreciate that. And don't think that me thanking you for your patience now or in the future is the same as saying don't ask the questions. We want the questions. That was the point of today. We were able to get way more answers than I thought. Probably not to the level of specificity that everybody wants, but hopefully the general answers that we were able to give shed some light on things. But keep asking the questions. The most effective way to do it is on the online form that was in the principal's message, which is on our website. So thank you. Thank you to Tanisha and Joy and Mark for supporting this. I saw some teacher names I recognized before. Gosh, there's 84 people still with us. Amazing. Thank you, parents. And we'll be in touch as best we can. Hopefully we're demonstrating that we're all working really hard to get the certainty we want and then the learning that we want for our kids, given the circumstances. So I would say be safe, continue to tell you don't need to tell your parent friends what to do, but the friends you have that aren't parents, tell them to stay home and stay safe, so that our kids can go to school, hopefully in term 2. And I think that will be it for tonight. Thank you, everybody. And once again, stay safe and be in touch. Take care, Peabody and Watkins.